So just a little bit about me. I'm currently an undergrad student at UCF. I initially played my freshman year at Palm Beach Atlantic University. I played basketball there. And then going to my sophomore year, I am transferring to UCF, currently studying integrated business and sport business management. And just my goals right now are just to get some work samples out, just progress toward possibly having a career in the NBA, working in basketball. And so just a little bit about this project and how it happened. So like right around the time when lockdown started going down in March, I basically decided, okay, I'm going all in on getting a job in the NBA. I'm not going to do anything else. I'm just strictly focusing on that. And so I started off with just doing a lot of just small scouting projects. Started off with like a 10-page deck on just like some second round guys who I thought could add some value to teams. And I initially just started sending it out to like anyone that would kind of listen. I initially started off by just sending it to people through like Instagram DMs, just seeing if anyone in the league liked it. And then I discovered the power of LinkedIn and decided to start using that platform a lot more, building a network through there, making those connections and sending it out through there. And then in June, in my summer semester, I took a class in sport business analytics, and I helped build a model for the for an NFL team's variable ticketing. So that was kind of like the first thing that got me into analytics and understanding what modeling is. I knew I liked advanced stats, like I knew what true shooting was, all that kind of stuff, assist percentage. I don't think I understood the nuance of it and what went into it. Um, but then after that class, I started to get a better sense of, okay, like you need to learn coding, you need to do all this stuff, you need to know R, SQL, Python, all that. And then so I decided to create like a subjective grading system for prospects. So I would go through, have like 9 categories for prospects, and each category would be weighted differently based on the position of the prospect. So guards, passing would be say 20% versus bigs passing would be 5%. Just another subjective measure, and then giving them a value based on that skill. The thing I noticed with that though, obviously, is that so if I gave that the calculator to someone else, they would come up with completely different numbers for the exact same prospect. So it wasn't really reliable. It was more opinion based. So I decided to try to do something that was objective based in facts. And that's where I came up with this idea for this draft model. So I started to look at initial value as my variable. So I defined that as the on-court value of a prospect's first 3 seasons once they're in the NBA. And I filtered to just college prospects just because it was easier for collecting data. So I measured that initial value by box plus minus and then translating that to a dollar value. And that box plus minus was average over the 3 years. So I chose 3 seasons because for second round picks, it varies a lot. But for first round picks, team options kick in after that second year on the rookie scale deal. So basically, it was just another way to filter out prospects who weren't really league worthy, if that makes sense. So anyone who made that third season, some team believed in them enough to sign them for another year, whether it was their team or another team who picked them up off waivers. And then so for the data, I used 20 different variables, including true shooting, steal percentage, block percentage, just like those basic advanced stats. I also added in strength of schedule. I ended up adding that in later, just because it was another thing I thought of toward the end. And then also some specific metrics from Bartorvik. So percentage of minutes played and their all-in-one metric, PRPG. And so I pulled those from Bartorvik because Bartorvik was where I got all the data from. It was probably the most complete set of college data that I could find. And this was my first model I ever made. So I really didn't understand the process of data scraping or doing anything like that. And I knew with Bartorvik, you could literally just copy and paste onto Excel. So that's what I did. So I went through every year back through 2008 to 2017, copied and pasted the top 750 players from each college year, and then went through, picked out the guys who made the NBA by hand. Probably not the smartest idea, but it happened. And basically filtered down to those. It ended up being right around like 45-ish guys that played college every year. And from there, I would filter down to the guys who played those 3 years. Um, and then finding that initial value for the guys from 2008 to 2017, I looked at their BPM on Basketball Reference and did the math for all 350-ish guys, just by hand writing it down for all of them. Just because I didn't know how to do it through R or Python or anything, so I did this all in Excel. And then so to linear regression. So I was looking at basically the monetary value based on free market. So basically, like, how much is this guy worth if he gets free agency right now? And then you could also compare that to the rookie scale deal. So like currently right now I'm doing a write-up on Isaiah Joe with his contract and where he was valued at. I believe he provides positive value at or after the 18th pick in the draft on his contract. So that's another way you could use this. And then, so you can see here, I used 332 data points for initial value. So those were all like the college players who made it to the NBA during that time period. And then over 4,600 salary data points. And that included everyone in the NBA during that time period. So I pulled their salary and used that to basically translate it. And then, so with the linear regressions, it probably wasn't the smartest idea to do a linear regression, but that was kind of all I knew at the time. Probably now I would have tried something different, possibly like random foresting or something else. So I used a linear regression, and I basically broke it down into 3 separate models, just because, just to break it down by position to make it more specific. I initially looked at the 5 position traditional numbers, but I decided that probably wasn't the best option, just because there's some guys like combo guards who can put the 1 or the 2. There's guys who defend up and down a lineup. There's not as much finite positions as there used to traditionally be. And then so from there, I was basically deciding between either doing what I did, the 3 positions, or if any of you remember a paper from MIT Sloan from last year, they basically broke down positions into 9 different categories. So the thing is with that is I didn't have their data, so I didn't know what position everyone fit into. And I also couldn't predict what positions the guys in the current draft classes would fit into. So I basically had to do the simple option, go guard, forward, center. And I assigned the guys into each category based on the draft combine. So whatever they were assigned at their combine, that's what they were assigned for this. And then so looking at the results. So first thing I looked at was just, is there any correlation between initial value and strength of schedule? And as you can see here, there was no correlation at all. There's actually slightly negative correlation. I think that comes from the perspective of teams saying, oh, this guy's like a blue blood. He played at this great school, but he just didn't pan out there. We think we can turn him into this generational talent. Like, for example, if you're looking at guys like Harry Giles, who played at Duke, he really didn't do anything there because of injuries, but teams bet on him because he was Harry Giles, the number 1 player in that high school class. Still hasn't panned out completely, but he's still in the league, which is good. But then you have like guys like Daniel Orton too, like at Kentucky, he had a very poor season there. But then coming into the NBA, he was still ended up being drafted. Didn't really do anything once he got in the league, but he was bet on because he was at a blue blood. Guys in those lower tier schools, like say Steph Curry, Davidson, if he had a bad season there, he wouldn't have been drafted, even if he was like a higher rated player. And then I thought this was just a really cool visualization. So just looking at the correlation between BPM and salary. One thing I wish I'd done here was actually remove all the guys on the rookie scale contracts. So it was just the guys who actually signed new contracts. So So their contracts were actually dictated by the free market. But yeah, as you can see here, there was a rather obvious positive correlation between money and BPM. And then so to the actual models for each player. So I found the significant values by going through running a linear regression analysis for guards. And I looked at the whatever variable had the highest p-value, removed that. Went through, removed the next highest p-value, went through, removed the next highest p-value until I got it to where all the p-values were less than 0.1, meaning that they were significant. So the ones I pulled for guards were steal percentage, turnover percentage, and BPM. And then I also found that guards with a steal percentage greater than 2% were actually worth an extra $1.2 million annually. I thought that was kind of interesting just because there is like that old trope of, oh, 2% is like the benchmark. It turned out to actually be the benchmark in this analysis. And then something interesting I found here too was that with turnover percentage, there was actually a positive correlation. So the higher turnover percentage you had, the better you were in the NBA initially. From what I kind of concluded here is that basically guys who have higher turnover percentages, they typically would have more reign of the offense from their head coach. They're not going to be pulled as easily because if they were getting pulled more, they probably wouldn't turn the ball over as much just because they wouldn't be playing as much. So guys like, even like in this class, like Marcus Howard, like I remember him having a pretty decent turnover percentage, but he was one of their only sources of offense this year. So he would obviously rank pretty high in that. And then BPM, which is just your general overall metric. And then so for the top 2020 guards, I ranked the 10 best for every position. So Marcus Howard was ranked number one in this at a average BPM of negative 1.1, which correlated to $5.3 million annually through the first 3 years. So the thing I noticed with this was that there's a lot of just upperclassmen included. Halliburton, I think Halliburton and Dotson, I believe, are the only one on this list that weren't juniors or seniors. So you can see instantly that there is that you have a higher chance of providing initial value in the league if you are a older prospect. But then again, on the other side of that, you also have quote unquote like lower potential to improve off that. And then so looking at forwards, I went through the exact same process here, starting at 20 variables and going down and ended up with 2. So I ended up with BPM and 3-point percentage. Thought that was pretty fitting considering the 3 and D model, which is rather popular right now. That archetype is really coveted in the NBA currently, and teams will pay a very hefty price for that, even considering like going back to the 2016 free agency class. I know it was kind of an outlier there, but like Otto Porter, he got a huge deal there. Nicholas Batum too, like that money, like they should not have even gotten close to 100 mil, but because they fit that model and that increased salary cap, they did end up getting it. And then so looking at the top 2020 forwards, some lesser known guys near the top, Tyreek Jones and Freddie Gillespie out of Baylor. And I thought it was kind of weird here too that Tillman was put as a forward, considering he's definitely more of a center, but that's what he was put at through the comments. That's what he was ran through. Same with Paul Reed too. Well, you kind of put him as a 4.5, but yeah. So then you kind of notice that again too. It's a lot of the older guys, even Obi, even though he's only a sophomore this year, he comes into the draft being 22 years old. So you have that same trend again coming in of those older players are having the most initial impact. And then also you see too here, Paul Reed and Tyler Bay, neither of them really had much offense at all in college, and it probably won't. What little offense they had might not even translate to the NBA. So it does show that defense is valued through this. And then so looking at centers, so found that 2-point percentage was valuable along with 2-point attempts, effective field goal percentage, BPM, and percentage of minutes played. So I thought this was kind of interesting because there has been kind of a switch toward small ball fives. And I thought maybe 3-point percentage would be valuable for centers, but turns out with the small, it wasn't. I thought the percentage of minutes played was kind of interesting. I think it goes back again to why turnover percentage was valuable for guards. Just their coaches trusting them, the coaches believing in their skill on the court, and just getting that consistent play means that they deserve that consistent play. And yeah, so then with the centers, this was really weird. Udoka came in at 3.4, and out of everyone that was put through this algorithm, he was the second highest behind Anthony Davis. So that's definitely an outlier that probably doesn't make a lot of sense. But as you can see, like going back to those variables, he was he's up near like the top in the country every single year in 2-point percentage. Same with effective field goal percentage and percentage of minutes played toward the end of his career at Kansas. So like he hits all those marks that it requires. So this is something here that you would obviously say, okay, this needs added context to it. On defense, you can't guard pick and roll, all that. Just that extra context adds value. And then even looking at guys like Jalen Smith, like you can see if it took his floor spacing into effect, he'd probably be more valuable than Tilly, probably. So just because he's a much better defender too, plus he has the offensive skill set. And then I just also want to run a few potential lottery picks through this, just see how they fit into it. I thought it was kind of interesting that Isaiah Stewart was one of the worst players ran through this model. I think his issue was more of the offensive style at Washington, is that he kind of had free reign when he wanted to, and he didn't take a lot of easy shots. Like I believe it was either 40 or 60% of his offense came from the post, and only 15% of the offense came off of dives to the rim off the pick and roll. So you're not getting easy shots there. Like I remember watching film even against South Dakota, like he's taking fadeaway jumpers from like 10 feet. Like those aren't traditionally good shots. So I believe that's probably what brought him down some. And then just to conclude, so I found that rookie scale contracts are a lot better value than free agents. That's why, like, if you can find a value guy in the second round, it's better than grabbing like someone on a mid-level exception or 2 or 3 year deal for 2 or 3 million. It's just better value, and you have a higher chance of like hitting on those later contracts. So like with Isaiah Joe, like, he's probably not going to get drafted until late 20s, early 30s, but he provides plus value once you get past 18. So it makes financial sense to go after guys like that. But then also you see there is kind of a hard ceiling on players, on rookies, because only 6.6% of these guys on those initial deals provided a BPM over 0. So there's very few like at all. Is like mainly guys like they're already proven, kind of like Kawhi. He was there, I know. Like Miles Turner, as I said, like Davis too. It was a lot more bigs too, I noticed. So that was interesting. So I think they can provide like a little bit more value once they initially come into the league, just because guards do typically take some more time to develop. But yeah, so that is my presentation. And if you guys have any questions or anything, I'd be happy to answer them now.
Awesome presentation, Zach. I got a few. I'll let other people kind of open up, but yeah, go ahead, Spencer.
Yeah, well, if you had to change one thing throughout the process, what do you think it would be? Whether it was not using certain variables in the beginning, maybe having more positions like available to box guys into. Like, what do you think you would try to change?
I probably wouldn't have included BPM in the independent variables to look at, just because it's the exact same formula. So I think that kind of skewed it a little bit just to say, okay, we're finding like there's a lot of correlation here. Pulling that out probably would have introduced some more variables. And then again, like also with the finding like the market value, taking out those guys in those rookie skill deals probably would have made that more accurate just because it is contract strictly from the free market.
Just to bounce off that, Spencer, as well. Zach, I very much agree with you. We had Peyton last week. He presented as well on foul trouble. And as far as just clustering of players grow, I've found to just very much agree with the three clusters, kind of the guard, forward, centers. It just kind of pans out across all statistics that those are just the three best clusters to kind of group people into. We do have kind of the people that meld between two of them, but generally we can kind of cluster them in one of those three. Zach, could you go back to that center, the conclusion one for the centers? That one right here. So for your values, Zach, are each of these equally weighted? And would you, if you were to do this analysis again, would you maybe include negative factors? Something that I was thinking about would be like, something that would detract from a center might be if they had a really low free throw percentage or something, or like high foul trouble a lot. So are you weighting each of these the same? And would you ever put in like a negative factor in here?
Yeah, so they were all weighted equally. The only measure that like wasn't weighted the same was that was for guards was with the steal percentage over 2 because it just added that flat 1.2 million on top.
Interesting.
I definitely would consider running through like negative variables. That definitely is interesting because you can look at guards too. Like you can say like, oh, like 3-point percentage guys like Alfred Payton and like Dennis Smith Jr. who really couldn't shoot 3 at all this last year. How does that impact their effect on the team?
Yeah. Yeah. One thing I've been really interested in is this thing that we're calling hustle stats. It's like things that are kind of hard to measure in a player statistically, like loose balls to floor, tips, just things like that. I know NBA teams, they look for that as well. Is there, I mean, you have your Patrick Beverleys, the guys that really kind of come to the NBA because they're more hustle players. Have you found that to be kind of I think BPM kind of incorporates a lot of that.
I couldn't find like when like looking for data and stuff, I couldn't find anywhere that pulls that specifically for college players, which I wish would exist. Along with like player tracking for college, I think that would be extremely valuable. Like with the NBA, like most of the player tracking stuff is publicly available.
Tracking data, yeah.
It helps on the public sphere a lot with just creating projects and stuff. The only issue with college doing it is just the implementation process, just because the NCAA doesn't really have the power to tell everyone to do it. And it would kind of be on a school by school basis, kind of like how like the G League has done it.
Right.
The G League did it initially where it's, I believe it was only like 10 teams or something that had player tracking data in their arenas. So just
interesting.
Basically going off of that, it'd also be kind of difficult to do it across all of college basketball.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, the tracking data is hard to find as well.
Yeah, no, that would have been very interesting to have for this too, but fortunately it's not available.
Cool. Well, thank you. Turdad, thank you for joining us too. Spencer, I don't know if you have any questions, Turdad. Hey, how's it going, man?
This is just cool to look at.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, Zach, great job. Turdad, if you're interested in his full 428 page, why don't you go ahead and throw it in the, if it's okay to share with the group here, Zach. Yeah. You want to throw that link in there? Turdad might be interested in.
Yeah, let's do
that link. Yeah, I really like what you did with that report, Zach. I can tell the work that's gone into it. I mean, I've been doing these for a few players, and that itself is mind blowing just to see the depth of analysis you've done on this. So, is that public to share, Zach? Can I get that around to some friends and stuff?
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I'd like to definitely get
Yeah,
there
no,
on
we
some.
made sure to have that. Like, we want it to be like public, wanted,
Yeah.
like, real estate, like, wanted to be free.
Yeah,
All that.
I'll be on Wednesday. I'll be having one screen with your report and one screen with the draft going on. So
No, yeah, we were so excited earlier when that CP3 trade went through because like we literally had that in the write up.
did you really?
Yeah,
That's
we had
so crazy.
um
Going to
we
Phoenix?
had, huh? Yeah,
Going
we
to
had
Phoenix?
CP3. Yeah, we had CP3 and their second round pick for Oubre, Rubio, and a 2022 first.
Wow, well done.
Yeah, no,
Well
we were
done.
very happy when that went through.
That's so funny. Yeah, I'm gonna do a deeper dive on it tonight. So I'll look into it.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a very, very deep cut.
Yeah, it's gonna take some
Very
brain
deep.
power off.
Yes, yes.
So cool.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Zach. I'm gonna put the recording up on YouTube too for some other people to check it out. So
Sweet, sounds good.
all right, thanks guys. Appreciate it. Y'all have a good night.
Good.
Take care,
Take care.
guys.
Bye.